Good afternoon. I'm going to continue with my series on the 1984-1985 World Championship match between Anatoly Karpov, the defending champion, who here has the white pieces, and the challenger Garry Kasparov, who has the black pieces. This is game number 9. Karpov leads 3-0. First to 6 wins without draws counting is the agreement for the match. And let's see what happens. D4, D5, C4, C6. E6 defends the pawn. Queen's Gambit declined. This is an anti-nymph, so if you play knight to C3, which looks natural to increase pressure on this pawn, then bishop comes here and pins the pawn immediately. It's no threat to win a piece or a pawn, but there is some threat to damage the structure on the queen side. The idea behind the nymphs ending is that you take this knight with the bishop, damage the structure and work against the doubled pawns. But no, it turns into some kind of Tarrasch or pseudo Tarrasch when Kasparov plays c5. The pawn is taken, and now Karpov is in a position to play pawn takes and leave this pawn on d5 isolated. But he prefers to, exactly as we've seen in the game yesterday, develop the bishop first to make it into some kind of Catalan. And they both castle, and when they both castle, it's a closed Catalan. And the knight comes to d3, c3 even, to attack the pawn on d4, d5 even. I'm bound to get it right one day. And the knight develops to attack the pawn on d4. Twice attacked, twice defended. Bishop develops to threaten the knight, to threaten the pawn. So the pawn is taken and he takes with the knight. So the question is asked by Kasparov, do you want to take that knight or not? And Karpov says no. This odd looking move, we've seen in yesterday's game, it worked very well for Karpov in yesterday's game. Let's see what happens today. So the rook comes to e8, of course, taking control over the semi-open file, and the queen comes to b3, and the knight comes to a5, and as we've seen before, often this knight on a5 is badly placed, and player can suffer for that. So the queen comes to c2, and the bishop comes to g4, attacking the pawn. Knight comes to f5, just exactly the same, and this is the same as yesterday. I think this bishop d4 is where we're going into a new line that wasn't the same as yesterday, I think. And the knight, rook takes. He can't yet play this here because, oh yeah, he can, sorry, ignore me. But if he plays the pawn here, the knight gets taken by the bishop, and when he takes back with the queen, the knight is hanging. So, no, there is a threat to play e4, but again, the pawn will come here, and the knight is pinned to the queen. So the rook comes to threaten the pawn and pin the pawn effectively to the queen. So the queen takes up an active position, maybe thinking about swapping off this bishop on h3 and supporting the attack on the knight on c3. So making d5 a more realistic, d4 a more realistic opportunity. So the queen comes to e4 and the rook comes to d8. It's not attacked by the queen there. Alright, it was defended by the knight and the queen, but it is more effective on the d file. So Karpov looks like doing a doubling. Pawn comes to a6. He's not threatening to play pawn here because then the knight would be undefended. So the rooks are doubled and the knight comes to c4. He's going to be perfectly happy with this swap here. He probably isn't going to take with the pawn. If the pawn is taken, he's probably going to take with the rook. He's taken, he takes with the rook, threatening the queen. Queen comes to a5, and now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces on the 1, 2, 3 times defended pawn. So he attacks the queen and defends the pawn once more. b6, great square. The rook comes to d7, so they might think about doubling here, but mainly so that the rook isn't attacked by the queen anymore. The pawn is now doubly defended. The pawn comes to d4 and the queen comes to c7. He's willing to swap off, and yeah, if there's a swap and this rook takes, then the pawn is defended 3 times, attacked 4 times, but the activity that Kasparov will get with his rook on the last rank, he thinks is worth it. So he goes for that swap, but he gives himself an escape first before going in for swapping off the pawn. Kasparov restrains the expansion here, and Karpov might be thinking about playing b5 to attack the rook, but of course he has to defend the knight first, or move the knight. More solid pawn chain is created, and this pawn is put on a defended square, and it also defends the rook there. King comes forward, defends the knight, gets off a light coloured square, generally just a better square. So the king comes to h2, and the rook comes to c4. Kasparov is willing to go in for this swap off to reunite his pawns. Then it would be 3 against 2 and 4 against 3. He believes that might give him a chance, but Karpov's not willing to swap off the pawns at this stage. Kasparov gets b5 in whilst he's got the chance, and the king comes to g2, where it still defends the pawn and where it defends the bishop. He defends this pawn with the rook so that he's in a position to push this pawn, possibly. So he takes, and he takes with the rook, not the pawn. I thought he would take the pawn to reunite his structure, but no. And yeah, the king will head for here. So the rook is chased away, and it has to take, and now they're both fixed with a isolated pawn in the middle. Who has the better position? Well, the black pawns are on white light coloured squares, so they're easier to attack by the bishop, and they also get in the way of his own bishop. The pawn here really restricts the light squared bishop. It doesn't restrict this light squared bishop the same way, and in fact, a swap of bishops might lead to a good knight against bad bishop position for Karpov. So the king comes to c7, and the knight begins rearranging. It's going to be heading for here. Seems the ideal square. Attacks this pawn as well. So it comes out of the way of the attack with the knight and defends the pawn before. So the knight comes here and attacks the pawn and attacks this square. King comes to d6, and yeah, now he might be threatening to push e5. The knight comes to g8, and instead of playing g5, g4, he plays h4, which restrains this pawn and thereby restrains this pawn, and to some extent this pawn. So it's a big space grab by Karpov. Knight comes to h6. It looks like this route for the king is a natural enough way to come into the opponent's position. And he threatens this pawn and this pawn at the same time, there's only one way to defend this pawn, and that's with the knight. If he defends this pawn with the king, then this pawn falls. So indeed he plays knight to f2. It might be now possible to think about pushing here. Maybe he's going to lose a pawn like that. So the pawn comes to f6, and he attacks the knight that way. And is now looking, definitely, at a good knight versus bad bishop situation. The pawn is pushed, and he gets rid of that bishop straight away. This bishop is restrained by the black's bishop is restrained by the pawns on these 4 light squares. The knight has almost no restraints. So he takes back, and the knight attacks the bishop first before swapping off the pawns. Bishop comes to b1. Yeah, might be useful here. Here might be a perfect square for the bishop if he can hold himself on that square. So the pawn is put on a dark square, and now the only piece on a dark square for white is this pawn, and this can soon be put on a dark square where the bishop doesn't see it. And instead of just taking the pawn back straight away, he puts his knight on a better square so that he can come here and attack this weak pawn. The pawn is taken, and the king takes. So it might seem like a bit of a pointless pawn sacrifice there, but it guarantees the square f4 for the knight, and this pawn is undefendable. So the king comes to e6, and the knight says check, picks up the pawn, and picks up the other pawn. And there's no threatening to come here, back to here, here. You know, it has good, or here, has good routes all over the board that isn't at all restrained. So the king comes back to e6 to kind of cut off the route back for the knight. The knight says check again, and now has a threat on this pawn. It might be possible to think about mounting an attack on this pawn, but at the minute the bishop's really well placed here because it restrains the king from getting to this square or this square where it can attack this pawn. And he's in a position to come here with the bishop, to attack, defend this pawn. So the king comes forward, the bishop comes to c2. The king comes forward again, so the bishop is forced to keep on this diagonal. If the bishop moves off this diagonal, pawn comes here, and then this pawn is virtually undefendable. So the pawn is attacked, and Karpov's perfectly willing to swap the only pawn on a light coloured square for the only pawn on a dark coloured square. But he defends it, but it's not going to last long because knight takes pawn will be check, and this pawn will fall. But instead of winning that pawn, he takes another check and wins this pawn. Fantastic. Now this pawn is always going to be weak. It can't be defended by the king. So the king comes to d7, and he takes the pawn. Now he's still threatening this pawn. Okay, he's threatening this pawn, but he's almost in a position to be 3 pawns up. Pawn's taken on f3, and the pawn's taken on f6. So now this is the only thing stopping white's queenside from collapsing, and this is a difficult pawn to defend. King comes to d6, king comes to f5 to keep the king out of to keep the king in range to defend this pawn. King comes to d5, also going to defend the pawn. He isn't. He's going to attack the bishop first. The bishop has to retreat, and then he's able to defend the pawn. So that's how the plan of defending the pawn works. King comes to c4. Maybe he's thinking about heading in this direction. It's not going to work for him, of course, because the knight comes here and cuts off this square. The king can never get there, and it may be possible for the king, if the king moves, for the king to come around and attack this pawn. So bishop comes to c6, where it defends the pawn, and the knight comes to d3. If he comes here, he can go back with the check. Bishop goes to g2, and the knight comes to c6, d5, e5 even check. But no, this is letting the king in here. What is? Yeah, but he goes to c3 instead of going here. And the knight begins a new route to this square. King cuts off the knight, and the bishop finds it a good square. So some of this manoeuvring is very subtle and difficult to understand. But basically, Karpov is looking for an opportunity to push the d pawn. At the moment, the king and the bishop both restrain it. But if he goes to try and attack the a pawn, b3 for example, then the pawn can come directly to d5. And it's very difficult for black to then stop the pawn. Because once it gets to d6, the only squares to stop it, c6 and c8, are both covered by the knight. So he can't really go after the king, after the a pawn with the king. So it is difficult for him to keep finding a safe square for his bishop all the time. So the knight comes to f5. Obviously he's threatening a check here, which will pick up the bishop. The bishop goes back to g2, and he says the check, and now the pawn is going to fall. And he takes the pawn, and I think it's here. Oh no, he plays a4 first. Yeah, because he's still got a chance if he gets this knight. But now the knight comes to d6, and Kasparov resigns. Why? If he takes this pawn, then this pawn is going to head away, and it'll have to be captured by this knight on the king. If he takes the pawn, the king's outside the queening square, so the pawn will have to be captured by the bishop, which will then be taken by the knight, and the knight and pawn will easily be able to queen. If he doesn't, if he plays this pawn for instance, then the knight can come here, or the pawn can come here. It's if the bishop comes here, the pawn can come here. No, it can, and then he's gonna get one of these two pawns queened. So, and the knight is also threatening to come here, cutting the bishop off permanently from this pawn. And so he can't keep hold of he can't stop all three pawns from queening with the bishop, especially against the knight. So a brilliant good knight, bad bishop strategy, a brilliant light square strategy from Karpov. A real lesson in how to convert a slight middle game advantage into a crushing end game win. Kasparov must have felt so deflated and must have thought that Karpov was such a difficult opponent, and Karpov was indeed a difficult opponent. That thing people say about Anatoly Karpov, for 60 moves, nothing happens, and then you lose. Well, this is a perfect example of this. For 60 moves, nothing much happens, and then suddenly your weak white squares and your bad bishop collapse in the face of the good knight. Yeah. And now, after 9 games, Kasparov leads 4-0. That's almost every other game. Is he going to win this in 12 games? Is it going to be the shortest match under these conditions ever? No, it isn't. Things will get dramatic in a reasonably undramatic way fairly soon. Yeah, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to my videos. Thanks. Bye.